Hello everyone, I'm Daisuke from Pixologic. Let's start some sculpting today. I'm thinking about adding some details on this one, and I think I'm safe to call it close to finishing it. So today I'll try to finish my work, and let's see what I can come up next for the next stream. Currently I'm thinking about adding a bit more details because why not? Like, if you're working on Victorian dresses, the details are insane. Like, you have a lot of like details on top of details on top of details. So that's the attractive part of the dress. So I think I should replicate that kind of like taste. And currently I'm thinking about adding some frills at the end of this one. And I'm gonna show you a couple of ways that I can use to like make some like details. Like, for example, making frills at this case, on this case, and like for example, if I start my frills, like if I want to make some frills over here, I can use a couple of ways to do it. So first of all, I don't need like I don't know, I have a bunch of like data like this, but I don't need it. So what I would do is I would go to macro and delete unselected tools. If you do this, be careful what you're selecting, because it's going to delete all the non-active tools that you have in your data. And if you say OK, it's going to delete all the tools that ZBrush has inside. So you can see that there's no additional data except for the active tool you selected. This is a handy one, so you can take a look at the macro inside macro, and you can go to the delete unselected tools. And also another way I was thinking about is that I'm gonna select a mesh, maybe a plane like this, and I just need a couple of polygons. So I'm gonna switch to poly, and then maybe a couple of lines like 3, 4, well 5 I guess, no 4 lines and no vertical lines, well horizontal lines I guess. Okay, so then let me switch to Gizmo, scale down like this, and I'm gonna move this up to here and have a bit of roundness to it. And I'm gonna add a bit of scaling so it squishes down like this. And maybe it's better to just move a bit like this, I guess. And let's just snap the rest of the vertical lines, no, the horizontal lines, to be on the same plane like this, I guess. Looks fine. And we're gonna convert this to micropolys, but let me see if I need to do anything else. Maybe move this a bit more lower so it has that kind of like art going on. And maybe I would like to add a bit of edge like this, but so something like this, I guess. Maybe two back. So I'm gonna move it a bit more towards the front. And well, let's see what the result would look like. So since I made this as a separate tool, what I can do is I can go to well, I need to add some planes, so let's add a duplicate, and I'm gonna delete some subtools. No, subdivision levels should be fine. I'm gonna add a bit of IMM primitives H, and you have a plane here. It's hard to look at, so yeah, so this should be the plane I've inserted, and I'm gonna separate this because I don't need the rest of it. So split unmasked, and I'm gonna delete the rest of it. Oh, sorry, I just deleted the flowers. And let me see, I just need to copy the flowers. Copy tool, no, copy. And I just need to select the one from here, paste, and delete the rest. Okay. Okay, so I have a polygon, a single polygon like this, and I'm going to use this to my advantage. I need to go to the demodeler and go to free size and free angle, and I'm just going to extend like this. Maybe I want to have the mesh on the surface, so I can just adjust it later on, and it's going to look like this, right? And then I'm just going to move the planes like using the move radius, so it moves like this. And what I'm going to do is use dynamic subdivisions, dynamic, and without any subdivision levels, and I'm going to press Control with micropolys on, and then I'm going to select the mesh where did I delete? Oh, shit. I've deleted the mesh that I made. Sorry. Let me just do this again. Let me just do a simple version and just show you what I'm doing. Usually the second time is easier and faster, so just do it second time. It's easier and clean usually. Okay, so I made a mesh like this. Let's just rename this as frill. And if you go to the mesh that you've assigned here, you don't need any thickness. No thickness, and you just need to press the micropoly with control on, and then you can select the mesh from here, and then you're gonna have a frill. But since the scale is not correct, you need to move this and then set the size to 2. And then this is good to go, I guess. So dynamic subdivisions, poly, micropoly on. And then it's rotated in 90 degrees angle, so I'm gonna rotate this like so. Like if you press rotate Z, it's gonna rotate this 90-degree angles, and then you can see that it made this kind of like a frill, right? And then you can assign, or you can apply it first, and then you can apply the smoothing like this. Maybe you need to add some inserts like so, and then you can apply some smoothing to it. So you can use this kind of like technique to make some quick frills, and if you save it as a micropoly, you can use this as a quick way to add more like quick frills. And the benefit of this is that you can add the polys and then you can just make it as a frill. So this is a cool way and a quick way to actually get some frills around the shape you want. Is the voice going fine? Is the audio fine, I guess? I had to like tweak my audio settings today, so I'm not really sure if that's working. when using the modeler tools with the with this kind of like extrude, be careful not to touch the cube mesh because it's gonna add more geometries over here. So I just recommend using the do nothing, so it does not like move around the mesh or like add any extra geometry that you don't need. I usually just use the snake hook after like generating these kind of like edges because it's faster that way, or it's just like easy to move around. Hello, yo. It's the morning in Japan, like it's 7:30, well, 7:49 in Japan AM, and like since the US time zone has shifted like slightly, like 1 hour ahead. For me, it's a bit like odd because I'm not really used to like time zones, or like I'm not really used to like summertime or winter, like daylight saving times. I'm not like I'm not familiar with the concept. I always like sculpting something compared to like moving the vertex and like stretching the edges or like stretching around the polygons. Like I don't want to like push around the vertex that much compared to sculpting because it's not visually fun, it's boring, and you need to keep the consistent length as is, and it's not really like for me. But sometimes you need to do it. It's beneficial this way. So okay, I'm just gonna bridge this, bridge, edge, and then add some insert, and then I'm just gonna use the snake hook to adjust. I really like Snake Hook because it's really easy to move around the edges or the points. It's just fun to use it. Okay, let's see what I've got. So currently this doesn't have any like frill like features, but I can use the dynamic and get some frill effects happening like this. And then I can apply and then add thickness later on using dynamic subdivids. Maybe a bit more thicker, but not too thick. Okay. Oh, it's I think it's better to move around the mesh. Like this. And use a line if, like, currently this is rotating in a different angle, right? So what you need to do is use a line to match the rotation properly. And if you have any like weird geometry going on, like for example this area, you need to delete the mesh. Usually it's just an artifact when you clicked on the edge and then pulled it accidentally. So you just need to be aware of that. So this should be fixed. And then apply, add thickness. Like this. And I just need to add some inserts like this. Like so. And add some divides. And get some frills like this. And if it's going a bit too down, this is because you added the offsets. So you can go back to the position like so, and go. Offset 100, add thickness. What's the best anime of all time? That's a difficult question. I always love like Railgun series, but at the same time I also love the Gungrave series. I think you're not really familiar with Gungrave, but it's a good anime. I think it was one of the underrated animes, and like the people who watch these series only know it's a good anime. Same for Scride. I like Scride. I think I need to move the ribbons a bit. So I'm gonna use the gizmo technique, and then just move around the rest of the frills. So, well, this is the one way you can like create frills, and if you haven't, there's a couple of ways to make frills. Like you can use IMMs, like I did. Did I show you the way you can make frills with IMMs? I guess not. Well, I can show you that one as well. There's a popular IMM frill brush in the IMM repository you can use on the ZBrush Central. I use it occasionally. It's very handy to use, and you can use that if you don't want to make it from scratch. But for example, I think I have, yeah, the SMIMM frill is the one I'm talking about. So what this does is that you can make a frill out of a curve like this. So if you have a separate geometry like this, like if you have a separate polygroup, you can create a IMM curve around this area. So since this is a bit old, it has the lazy mouse attached to it. So usually you want to take this off, and then you can snap to the surface like this. And because this is so small, it's gonna like create so much geometry. So what I want to do is that I don't want to have this too small. Maybe a bit more bigger, like this. So yeah, you can use this as a very quick way to make some frills, and then you can also like move this around if you have it separate. So if you go to the split unmasked pots, it's going to be a separate mask and a separate pot like this, and you can move it around with Snakehook or Morph Brush, whichever you please. And this is very simple. Like if you actually look at the IMM brush itself, if you go to the IMM brush, and then if you, for example, if you go to some Cube 3D, and then go to brush, to mesh, it's just this. It's very simple. Like it's just repeating this part. So it goes around the curve, and then you can just register it as a brush. And the difference between the L and the R is the sides, which is which the frill is applied. So if you have a mesh like, for instance, like if you have a cylinder like this, and then if you have a curve like this, if you select R, it's going to be the downwards, like you can see the frill going downwards. But if you select the L, it's going to go the opposite side as well. So you can select which way you want the frill to be. So you can use this as an advantage. So if you go to the IMM repository, there's a brush called SM's Frill. SM Frill. IMM. So it's this one. Oh, where did I put the comments? Okay, here. So this is popular IMM, which I used in the early days as well. I use it occasionally. It's very handy, but at the same time it's really repetitive, so be aware that you need to tweak some tweak some settings so it doesn't really look like repeated. Like it's very it really looks like repeated patterns. So you need to move it around enough so it doesn't look like it's just a IMM brush. Well, another way you can make frills is that you can just make some masks and then apply some extrude, which I'm going to show you in a bit. So there's like 3 or 4 methods to just making frills. Like there's the mask method, there's the IMM method, there's the micropoly method. I usually prefer using the micropoly method because it has a bit more control where the placement will be. IMM curves are a bit like tricky when it comes to these kind of like complex curves, so you need to spend a bit more time like tweaking them so it like gets placed in the correct position. But the benefit of IMM brush is that like you can register multiple things and then use them to your advantage. Well, you can do that with the micropolys, but you need to like create the base mesh for the IMM, the micropolys to be in place. So it takes a bit of time like prepping the planes and inserting the planes to be on the specific position. So it depends on what your method is. And I think I recall the guy who made this specific IMM made another version where he's like using the micropoly method to actually get some frills done. So yeah, so there's that as well. And also you can use the back face masking to add some thickness like so, to get a bit more variations to the surface. I'm gonna spend more time if I'm doing it for my personal project, but it's just a demonstration, so I'm gonna cut some corners. It's like 3-minute cooking, right? So yeah, you have this kind of like complex curve very, very quickly. You can also use with the ZBrush if you need to have some like cleaner topology, or if you have some like specific topology in mind, you can use that as well. And another way you can do it is, like for example, if I have a mesh like this, and if you have an area where you can apply some masking. Well, since this is a bit rough, let me just see if I can make it a bit cleaner. That looks fine. Then if I can apply some masking. Oh, I see. Okay, so there was dynamic subdivisions applied, so that's why the masking was a bit weird. And if I start like drawing a mask like this is not what I want. What I want is like, I want to draw some thin masking like this. And then just repeat this. Like so. This is tedious, but it have a bit more control what kind of like shape you want. But it totally depends on what kind of like squiggle you're drawing. Like if you don't really like the squiggles, you can also like tweak the masking to get a better squiggle. I can't talk today. Oh no. Help. Hey, welcome. Welcome. I haven't been speaking English for a couple of days. I was speaking a lot of like Japanese in this couple of days. My brain's totally switched back to Japanese. I can't speak English now. Like I can't. Like it's very hard. So I have this kind of like squiggle, right? Perfect. Job done, right? And then I just need to make this as a, oh, I just need to copy this. I just need to make this as a separate mesh. Like so. And delete hidden. I don't need anything below this. And what I'm gonna do is gonna check if there's no weird geometry. Oh, there's a couple of weird geometry because the base mesh is like weird. Oof, sorry. So I'm gonna connect some areas. When you have these kind of like small areas which is very like odd, you just need to like draw a bit more thicker masks. and then connect them. So looks fine, I guess. Delete hidden. And let's see what I can do. So currently it doesn't have any thickness. It has some jaggy edges. So I usually just do some like polish by features. So it gets this kind of like roundness to it. And then if this happens, you just need to like add more geometry to this. So extrude would be your friend, like so. Yeah, it's really easy to spot when you have the polish by features turned on. So you can find areas like this, which has some like non-manifold edges, which is like just connecting barely, and it's not really connecting. Yep, another area like this. Usually you want to have some thicker masking, so you don't really have to deal with this kind of like tedious stuff. Yep, looks fine. Okay, let's just remesh this. And then let's add some thickness. So currently it looks like this. Perfect, right? But you can add thickness by using the dynamic subdivisions, no smooth subtools. No. Why do I keep saying subtools? Like smooth subdivisions. And then if I just add thickness like this, maybe 100% should be fine. Maybe too strong. And if I have some weird geometry like this, which sometimes happens, I just need to like use the smooth functionality to smooth it out, like this. This is weird. Oh. Well, this would be weird, of course. Extrude. Okay, should be fine. Oh. So we have some situations happening over here, and I just need to like tweak this around so it doesn't have this kind of like overhang. So what I'm gonna do is just delete this area because I don't need this. Don't need you. Oh, another area. should be fine. Maybe I need to just use the clip curve to make it flat. Let's see if this works. Boom. Kinda. Well, it should be fine. So you can use this as well as a secondary or tertiary method, I guess. Hey, welcome. So if you want to add more frills, you can use one of the methods from the three, and it's very easy to add more details. You can also use Dynamesh to connect these and then clean it up afterwards. For example, if you have a messy mesh like this, because I'm lazy, I don't really want to take time to actually spend more time prepping or cleaning up this area. If I want to just make it really easy and quick, I just use the Dynamesh method and then connect it around and then squish it till I get some cleaner topology. I was surprised this week, it's already Friday in Japan, but because it's the middle of November, I was very surprised that is it the I was surprised it was more close to the end of the year and I did not do anything. I wanted to clean up my room. Well, I did a couple of cleaning up, but I wanted to do some real cleaning up my room, replacing my table, swapping around areas, more doing fancy stuff. I didn't get the time to do that, so I'm wondering where my time went, for example. It's very odd, it's very easy to just when I was a student, I think I was spending more more valuable time compared to me being more a bit more older compared to my younger ages. But I think I'm spending or I'm using my days non-efficiently. How would I say this? It's not really non-effect. 1 year feels short for me. Would be the correct term, I guess. 1 year is very short for me compared to the compared to my younger days. I don't know why is that the case. Oh, I just need to separate this. Subtool, unmasked, just using the Dynamesh. Close this off. Yep, nicely done. And let's see if I can add more details. A bit more bigger, I guess. A bit more. Yeah, nice. Split to mask. Let me add more thickness so I can have a bit more. Well, if the frills feel a bit thin, it's gonna like look different compared to the thicker ones. So I want some thickness going on here. And I want some details on the back as well. Like this. I think I want some like overlap happening on the frills, so I think I should add a bit more layers to this, like this. quick saving. I sometimes get some questions related to quick saving, and like some people have a very long time saving, but that's because the data is so big that it takes some time to actually save. And also, if you're using some HDDs, like hard disk drives, I usually recommend them to save on a SSD, which is very quick and like it's very fast compared to the HDDs. So if you're struggling with quick saves, and if you're taking too much time actually saving, usually I'd recommend you use the SSD and like cutting off the undo history. So currently in ZBrush you can save the undo history as well in the quick save. So if you go to the quick save and like if you press the skip undo history in alter quick save files, it's gonna like skip the quick save informations when you're saving in the quick save. So it's gonna like reduce the size of the quick save, and also you're gonna like eliminate the extra size of the project file as well. Like if you go to the file, and if you enable the undo history, it's gonna save the undo history in the project file, making that like file size bigger as well. So you'd want to like if you want to save the speed and the like folder size, you would want to disable that. And also, like I see a couple of people who have like experiences with like crashed files, and usually their file size is so big, like the ZBrush is struggling to handle them. So just check your files, check if you're not going too crazy with the Dynamesh, because like handling raw polygon data compared to a like subdivided mesh is very different. Like having a subdivided mesh is more easier to handle on the data side compared to a raw data with like billions of polygons. So yeah, and it saves your file size as well. So if you're having a difficult time saving files, just be aware of that. We usually don't recommend huge file sizes, like unnecessarily huge file size is the thing that usually people associate with ZBrush, but we usually don't recommend that amount of like file size on ZBrush side, because it's gonna like if it's a bigger data, you're gonna have more chance of having some like rogue data inside that. So usually I'd recommend cleaning it up as much as possible. Like for example, I don't need extra meshes like this. So if I'm done with the data, I'm gonna delete those data as much as possible, like using the delete unselected tools, and then clean up the data as you go along. And like some people would have some problematic data by loading the recovery files, and because it's a recovery file, you have a higher chance of that mesh having some problematic mesh inside it, making that like folder vulnerable compared to like other like normal meshes that you like make from scratch. So just be aware that you're using a recovery file, and that's not a perfect project file, right? So usually when I work with recovery files that may have some corrupt data, I just go through the subtool and see if there's any like corrupt data inside it. And then if there's no corrupt data inside it, I'm gonna save it as a ZTL file, so I don't have any like extra data, like the material data or any other like additional undo histories or those kind of like data lying around. So I have the minimum data possible, and then oh, then it's a bit more cleaner compared to the ZPR files that has more data. So yeah, those kind of like stuff is the way to go, I guess. Well, it depends on case by cases, like, but usually less data means less chance of like corruption. Like if you worked with the like 3D scan data, 3D scan data has a huge like set of like points, but also you have a higher chance of like weird geometries going around. And I worked for a 3D printing company, well, a traditional printing company which had a 3D print division, and it was a nightmare to deal with. So it's better to have a cleaner topology, cleaner geometry, less messy topology as much as possible. This live? I don't see any chat. Yes, this is live. You're on Twitch? Well, if you logged on to Twitch, then it's the chat will just like reload, so you don't really see any chats. But yeah. If it was a recording, I'll be more smarter. Like I don't do any mistakes. I'll be editing a lot of things. Let me add some more frills on the top. I think I can reconstruct this. No. Okay. Let me delete this and then reconstruct. I just need some lower polygons, so I just need to use the ZBrush then. Apply, and let's see. I don't need this area, so Maybe I just need to do it on the opposite side. Oh, I was wondering why it's like overlapping. So, yeah, I was just using the symmetry. Okay, looks good. Then I need to just separate this as a separate mesh. Split on mask. Move it around a bit. I just need to stretch it a bit. And I want this to be a bit more laying on the back, so I just need to tweak this area. Tapering, I guess? I could use taper. Oh. Delete higher. Don't need symmetry. I've been having a lot of trouble sculpting clean cuts in a metal chest plate. Tried topology, cutting brushes, but it creates a very... I have no... Like, what kind of like stuff you're making? Sculpting clean cuts in a metal? Oh, I get it. Like, you mean something like some panel looping? Yeah, I think I need to see what you're talking about. Well, I think you're talking about panel looping, like for example, like a metal like cut around it. Like if you have a cut like this, but if you're using Dam Standard, it has this kind of like roundness to it, right? So like if you want something sharper, then is the like Dam Standard is not the way to go. Like you can use the Chisel Brushes, for example, you go to the chisel, and you can just select some tips like this. You can get some grooves, and if you have some like jaggedness right like this, you can use the weighted smooth mode 4 to clean these areas. You can use something like this, or like you can use the other tips. I'll show you. So you go to brush, you go to the smooth brush modifiers, press shift, and then move the weighted smooth mode to 4, and then you're going to have the stroke direction mode on the smooth brush. And then if you use the stroke direction mode, it's going to maintain the details as you go along. But if you stroke it like this, it's going to destroy the curve. But if you do it like this, it's not going to destroy the curve. It's not going to destroy the details you just sculpted. Right? So if you move it like this, like if you move it like if you move the stroke like this, it's going to destroy the curve. But if you move it like this, it's not going to destroy the curve you just made. Also, there's a preset brush. On the brush, you can go to smooth, and then if you go to the smooth directional, this is the one which has the same setting by default. So you can just like add this to your brush setting and then just use that as a default. So this is very handy when you're making some like hard surface panel lines, and then if you don't want to destroy like this, it's going to destroy the line you just made. But like if you draw something like this and then you use the smooth directional, it's not going to destroy the line. So this is very handy when you're using something like chisel brushes. Chisel brushes are nice, but it tends to make these kind of like jagged grooves. But you can use the smooth directional to just remove these kind of jaggedness. Also, you can use the lazy mouse with a lesser lazy steps, like 0.01 or more or less. And then you can just smooth it around like this. My trouble with chiseling math and mark-cut, etc. is when you have to pick up, continue the line, you get different depths in trench trying to make a clean trench. Are you familiar with Morph Brush? No, are you familiar with Morph Targets? So when you're using the brush with lazy mouse, you're gonna have the situation like this, and then you're gonna draw a new line. It's gonna like have this like depth difference, right? But if you store the if you store the morph targets beforehand, it's not going to do that. Yeah, so it's not gonna like destroy the underlying geometry, where like it's gonna have the same depth essentially. Like, well, you can tweak the Z intensity to have a different setting, but it's not gonna mess up the underlying geometry where without this you're gonna have like if you draw a line without the morph targets, like it's going to destroy these areas and it has a different depth, right? But if you store the morph targets and then draw it, unless it's added beforehand, it's not going to like destroy the geometry. So just keep that in mind. It's storing the geometry state and then like trying to like not destroy it. So it's better to like store the state before you do any like sculpting on top of it, and then do some like sculpting on top of it. Well, like smooth directional would need to like be directional, because like you like following the stroke, like you're going this direction, and then you're gonna cross over this direction. It's a different direction, so it's not gonna do that. But you can maintain the areas by like doing it slowly, like this. And then if it goes over the borders, like if it's crossing over the borders, like just be careful with the strokes and then you'll be fine. And also you can, like I have a couple of like brushes, Ma cut. This is basically a pinch brush. So if like why this kind of like jaggedness is happening is because you don't really have a like topology around it to support that like line, right? So what Ma cut is doing is that like it's pinching around that area, so it like creates that like surrounding by forcing it to like follow around that surface. So that's what it's doing. And if you want that more stronger, you can go to the modifiers. Oh, this is 100%. Okay. So you can use the trails if that's the case. Then if you draw the trails 5 times, it's more stronger than the normal brush. But if it's way too strong, then you just need to adjust this trail a bit more and then just tweak the intensity. Like so. And then if you draw the smooth lines, then it's going to have a different kind of like result. Okay, could be handy. Also, you can use the layer brush as well. Like, for example, if you have a red layer brush, unless you're drawing a new line, it's gonna maintain the same like depth as well. So you can see there's a same depth happening like this. But if you're like doing a new stroke each time, it's going to add to that surface, so it's going to destroy the underlying structures. But if you do it like this, it's not going to like destroy this underlying surface. Did a great organic sculpt, so my shoddy hard surface chest work is showing even more. I'll still no top row if I don't clean up the hard surface. Well, hard surface is a different kind of like beast. You can watch some tutorials from, well, tutorials or some like people who are covering those topics. Like for example, if you go to the ZBrush summit where Marco Plouffe from Chaos Mansions is talking about this topic, and he's basically covering all the techniques necessary for making hard surface models. So take a look at this, you'll learn a lot. Also, you can use the panel lines as well. Like, you don't need to actually sculpt each time if you can use the live booleans to get the shapes. But if that's not the the result you want, that might not help. But like for example, if you have a IMM brush, IMM primitives H, and just delete the subdivision levels, and then just split this to a different mesh. Split unmasked, and then if you have a mesh like this and move the edge slightly like so, and then extrude the edge by snapping it onto the surface. And then if you have a mesh like this, like a strip like this, and you can add thickness to it. Like using the offset, and then like adding a bit of smoothness to it. Maybe this is too much, but you can add crease or some additional lines if you need. And then smooth a couple of times, and if you apply the live booleans, you're going to eat up the surface, and then you have a cleaner like final lines happening on the surface. So you can use this method as well if you want, or you can use the IMM brush method where you can apply some, where was it, the alpha, I think it was curve alpha, curve alpha. So if you go to the curve alpha, you can choose any alpha you want, or if you go to the, I think it was the extrude profile, and then you can select a couple of like curve brushes like this, and then if you draw something on the surface, I think I just need to confirm the dynamic. Oh, you just need to go to the curve, no repel, and if you have a mesh like so, you can eat up the surface, and if you need some, like, you don't need any fall off, you can update the size. and it's gonna basically like repeat the shape you selected here. So it's gonna, like, you can select some diamond shapes, you can select some like spherical shapes, you can select a couple of like crosses, and then you can separate this as a separate geometry. And like, if you like the shape, you can dynamish it as well. Well, no, subdivide it as well to get a smoother surface. And then you have some like patterns on the surface, so you can use this as well. So there's a lot of methods to making some like cool patterns on the surface. You can also watch the ZBrush summit from last month, where a Doom team, like the ID software, the id Software's Doom team, was showing off the method where they use the IMM brushes and the like ZModeler's topological brush to get the surface done. So yeah, you can use that as well. Yes, I was attempting to draw my cut lines with mask and trying to make a different mesh and sync into with the surface, but haven't figured out how to make a differential mesh. Differential mesh? You mean a mesh with thickness? Like, you can do that with extract. Like, you can go to extract, and then if you don't have any thickness, you're gonna have this kind of like result. Like, you have a plane on the surface, and then if you clean up the geometry, like using the polish by features and cleaning up the surface area, it doesn't look different right now, but if you add thickness, like using the dynamic subdivisions, like using like this, you're gonna have the mesh eating up the surface. So under Boolean? What? Oh, you want to mesh like this? What? Also, you can just move around the result as well to get a cleaner surface. Well, yeah, that's a huge tangent I just did. So let's go back to the sculpt I was doing. So yeah, there's like a lot of methods you can use to like get the pattern, get the panel loops. You can also use the panel loops from the edge loops and get some like cool designs from that as well. Panel loops usually create a lot of like strange geometry that result in distorted mesh when given thickness. I think it depends on what kind of like geometry you have. Like if you have a Dynamesh geometry and then you're drawing some like panel loops, then it's gonna have those kind of like geometries. No problem, thanks. How long does this take Daisuke to sculpt? Well, I was streaming like 2 hours, and this is my 6th time, so I think it's like 10 or 12 hours. And I'm explaining some other things and like doing some tangents, so I guess it's like 10 hours to do. It's not that hard. Like I didn't do any like off-stream sculpting for this one, so yeah, a couple of hours. I usually just struggle when I'm at this point, but like I want to add more to it, but like I usually struggle after this point. Like for me, like it's very hard to add more to it, but like the other people are much more good after this point. So if you're looking for advice after like the mid-frequency part, I think it's better to like search for other people's like artwork and then see more like tips and tricks around it. I'm a kind of like the artist who is very quick at the start, but I'm really struggling the end point. Like it really takes me a long time to actually get some decent shape after this point, so I really have fun around like 20 to like 40 hours maximum, but after that point it's a pain for me. Like it doesn't really change the geometry, but I need to like push myself to go through there, right? And I get lost in the forest of like details, so yeah, sometimes it's very hard to like for me to go push myself even further to get some details. When I'm sculpting, like I don't really think about like what brushes I'm using, but most of the time I'm just using smooth brush and clay buildup and like snake hook and then I'm using a couple of like specific brushes like IMM brushes and stuff like that to get my shapes. But like the clay buildup brushes are so nice to use. I can't really thank them enough. It's very fun. Like you can get like a lot of like shapes done by just using clay buildup and then just smoothing it out. And then if you like, for example, clay buildup has some like weakness when it comes to like getting some round shapes. So for example, this kind of like area, it looks very flat, right? So if you're using clay buildup too much, you tend to have a flat surface which is not really round. So like you try to fix this with like smooth brush, but usually what it does is that you make a like flat surface area which is not very like round, and you tend to have this kind of like surface which is like not really round but round. So what I would like usually do is add some roundness by using like standard brushes on top of it to get some more roundness to it, and then like it eliminates those kind of like clear build-up roundness compared to like standard brush roundness. And like if you do the standard brush roundness very like nicely, it feels very different compared to the clay build-up brush. So like if your sculpt doesn't like look right, it's because I guess it's like because of that like hard like shape happening on the surface, and it's not like looking correct. Like for example, these kind of like areas, it's like so hard, so like it's hard compared to like if you try to like round this off like this, it like it's very different, right? So after some point, I think it's better to like round these areas using like a normal brush, normal smooth brush, and a set of like standard brush, and then just like tweaking around the surface area so you have a better like catch to that like surface or geometry. Oh, I don't need double skirts. So after some point, you like if you like use too much like clay buildup, it's gonna look like a clay buildup surface. So I usually just break up those kind of like areas by using standard brush, and then it's gonna look more natural compared to the clay buildup. But this kind of like addition or like tweaking takes a lot of time to actually do. So like I usually stop my stream or like I stop my recording around here because like I'm gonna take more time actually doing the standard brush and the rounding up method, and it's gonna take forever to actually do it. So if I'm working on my personal project, and this is what I'm like usually doing. Like I'm building up the base mesh by using the clay buildup and then getting the hard surface or the basic shapes, and then like breaking up that like basic shape and then making some complex shape on top of it, or like blending between the hard shapes and then getting a like softer surface from that. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think it took like it's going places, but I think I should spend more time actually doing these kind of stuff. Also, I sometimes use clay brush, but for me, using clay brush is a bit hard for me because I'm so used to like using the clay buildup brush. I'm not really familiar when to use the clay brush, but I guess it's like filling between the cavities and then like building the bridge between those both like strong folds. Like for example, if I have this kind of area where this is very strong and creasing, I'm gonna fill this area by using clay brush and then like breaking that like hard tension on the surface. Like yeah, like the standard brush, the clay brush is a tricky brush to actually use compared to clay buildup brush. Like clay buildup brush is like straightforward in like when to use it, but if you start like learning a lot more about like surface like surface details, like you stand to like kind of like recognize when to use the clay brush. But for me, like it's very hard to like use this on a regular basis. But like the professionals used clay brush like a lot, so I'm like looking at a lot of like videos and tutorials, like seeing where to use them. But like since I'm making like stylized models a lot, like sometimes it's better if you don't really have that um like smooth like in the middle kind of like shapes compared to the like photorealistic models that a lot of like people would make. So for me, like I may like it kind of, like it may not be a priority brush that I need to use, but at the same time, like I want to learn what kind of like situations this could be used on a regular basis because I want to learn stuff. And like I do like use the clay brush to like actually cut and like draw some guides on the surface like this, and then smooth it out so it like destroys the guide, but at the same time it's like creating that surface area. It's a like a softer version of clay buildup brush when you're making some like the details on top of it, right? And another thing is that like it's a filler brush when it comes to like these kind of gaps and creases. Since this is a fabric, like I'm like filling those gaps to make it a bit more softer. If it's more hard surface or like more like harder as a cloth, I don't really need to fill those kind of gaps. Well, I mean like a softer, but a harder crease. It's hard to say. Like it's those kind of like like soft, like silky kind of like cloth, you have a lot of like creased like folds to it. It's more defined compared to the normal kind of like suit you wear, which is more hard to make those kind of like creases. Also, I find these like standard brush to like create more like transition shapes. Like for example, if I assign like alpha 39 to the surface, like if there's no information around this area, I can add it by sculpting to it. Maybe I need to use the lazy mouse and a bit more lower easy steps. But yeah, like for example, if I don't really have any like interesting shapes around this areas, I can add those kind of interesting shapes to that like plane geometry and then get some like shapes going on. So I usually tend to use the standard brush to get some like interesting like eye-catching areas where there's nothing to it, right? So it's a like intermediate brush, I guess. Like the beginners don't tend to use standard brush, but for me, like getting to understand standard brush took a bit more time to actually get my head around. But after I started to use it, like it made more sense. Daisuke, is there a possibility to make the Unify brush, for example, shorter like the delete hidden? Unify brush? A Unify button? Isn't it short like as is? Oh, you mean the okay. So if you want something short, you can create a macro. Like for example, if you make a new macro and then record it and then just press unify and then record that macro as a new unify, you have a shorter unify. Does that make sense? But the issue is that unify would need to have that X, Y, and Z. So if you register that macro, it's going to be using that XYZ as default. So unless you're fine with that, I think it's better to not do that. Does that make sense? Well, most of the cases you don't really need to unify just the one axis. So yeah, if that's fine with you, then go ahead. I like standard brush when it comes to like sculpting these kind of like frills because it's like pushing in a normal direction, so it kind of has that kind of like soft roundness to it. And if you're using the alpha with like these kind of like alpha 1, it's gonna make that kind of like a round like strokes, like round like vertical lines, and you can make some like interesting shades or like folds onto the surface. Okay, I'm gonna stop my stream in like 5 minutes. If you have any questions, just post them now. I think I'm gonna like call this work finished for this stream, and I think I'll just start a new model from the next stream. Do you have a feature from the coming ZBrush that you're most excited about? That's a hard question. I'm excited about everything. Well, bas relief, I think, is my favorite so far. So, for example, like I can like do some like reliefs on an armor, or I can do some like more complex stuff that I wasn't able to do. And also like since I pitched the idea of the visual sets, I really like that, like the visual sets on top of the subtool area that like you can set a couple of like the like visibilities and then store it, and then you can switch around. What's the plan on what to work on the next stream? In the Japanese stream, I'm making some mech, like Mecha Musume, which is like a mech girl with some like weapons and stuff. So I'm thinking about. I don't really have any specific ideas. Like, if you have any suggestions, just feel free to like just post them now. I'll take a look at them, and then if it's a good idea, if I like it, I may just do that. I don't usually do fan art for the live streams because, well, copyright is very strict in Japan, so I don't want to like make some like copyright holders angry about me. So I'm just being aware of those kind of like stuff. So no copyright stuff, no intellectual property. Yes, no intellectual properties, just like I said. Yeah, I can like the fan art is just fan art, but like if I do it as a company, it's a different kind of like stuff, right? Especially if you're dealing with Japanese companies like intellectual properties, like it's a different kind of like stuff that you need to deal with. So like I don't want to deal with those kind of like headaches. So usually some companies have some guidelines around their characters. Like for example, like Hatsune Miku has some guidelines about their like fan art, and if some companies are using it, they need to ask extra permissions to do those kind of like stuff. But if I'm doing it personally, like if I'm just out of my like work time and then just sculpting personally, that's fine. But yeah, like currently I'm representing Pixologic, so that would be a different kind of like stuff, right? It's not fan art anymore. I think like American companies or like other like European companies are very like loose on their terms of conditions. well, it can be strict as well as like being loose, but well, I need to think about it. Like, I just wanted to like sculpt some dress and like think about like a couple of like frills for this one, but I don't really have any ideas for the next one. Like, I don't want to work on two hard surface projects at the same time, so I'm thinking about soft, like organic shapes for the next one. But I'm not really good at creatures, so I don't know. Okay, time to end my stream here. So see you next time, I guess. Yeah, I think I didn't really think about this model to be this kind of like complex, but well, it became really complex then. Yeah, I can add more like complexity, like adding more like details on the tiara and adding more like jewels and stuff like that, adding more necklace and stuff. But I think it's fine for now. Okay, thanks. So see you next time. Bye.